Heal me, kid, and I'll wire you $1,000,000 before you blink. The laughter came fast, sharp, and easy, bouncing off the polished marble walls of St. Matthew's Charity Medical Center like coins hitting glass. Nurses slowed their steps. Doctors near the reception desk turned their heads. Even the volunteers stacking winter blankets by the entrance paused to look. Nathaniel Vaughn sat in the center of it all like a king on a borrowed throne, his tailored charcoal suit untouched by the rain outside, his silver watch glinting beneath the fluorescent lights. At 52, Nathaniel had built hospitals, funded research labs, and donated millions to medical breakthroughs, but none of it had fixed his right arm. It rested stiff against his side, the hand curled slightly inward, a permanent reminder of the helicopter crash 3 years ago. Specialists from Boston, Chicago, and Los Angeles had tried everything. Physical therapy, experimental treatments, endless consultations. Nothing worked. And now, standing in front of him in sneakers held together with gray duct tape and a faded green hoodie 2 sizes too big, was an 8-year-old boy who had just calmly said, "I can help you." The absurdity of it had made Nathaniel laugh. Malik Carter didn't laugh back. He stood still in the center of the bright hospital lobby, small fingers wrapped around the strap of his worn canvas bag, his dark eyes steady beneath the soft curls peeking from under his hood. Around his wrist was an old copper bracelet, scratched and weathered, like it had lived 100 lives before him. He looked too young to carry the kind of calm that sat in his face. Too small to stand in front of a millionaire and not flinch. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, smirking. "You're telling me all these doctors couldn't fix me, but you can?" More chuckles spread through the room. Malik nodded once. "Sometimes people listen too hard to pain and forget to listen to the body." The sentence landed strangely in the air, too wise for a boy his age. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. "That's so?" Malik stepped closer, his shoes squeaking softly against the tile. "Your shoulder isn't broken. It's stuck." Nathaniel's smile tightened. That was exactly how it felt. Stuck. Like something inside him had locked itself shut and thrown away the key. But he refused to let a child get under his skin. "All right," Nathaniel said louder now, letting the room hear. "Go ahead. Heal me. $1,000,000 if you do." A nurse near the desk shook her head, amused. Someone whispered, "This should be interesting." But Malik didn't move right away. Instead, he looked at Nathaniel's hand. Then at his shoulder. Then at his eyes. And for the first time in years, Nathaniel felt something unfamiliar crawl into his chest. Not pain. Not anger. Curiosity. Malik adjusted the copper bracelet on his wrist and said quietly, "I don't want your money." The laughter stopped. Just like that. And in the silence that followed, Malik took one step closer and said, "I only need 10 seconds. The silence in the hospital lobby felt heavier than the rain tapping against the glass doors. Nathaniel Vaughn stared at the boy in front of him, studying him now instead of dismissing him. 10 seconds. It was such a ridiculous thing to ask that part of him wanted to laugh again, but something about Malik Carter made the joke die in his throat. Maybe it was the way the boy stood so still, like he was not trying to prove anything. Maybe it was those calm brown eyes, steady as stone, looking at him like they already understood something Nathaniel did not. A nurse behind the front desk folded her arms. "Sir, this is probably not appropriate." Nathaniel lifted his left hand without looking at her. "Relax. It is 10 seconds. A few people in the waiting area leaned forward, curiosity replacing amusement. A man in a construction jacket stopped flipping through an old magazine. An elderly woman near the coffee machine lowered her cup. Everyone was watching now. Malik shifted the strap of his bag off his shoulder and carefully placed it on the floor. The copper bracelet slid against his wrist as he bent down, catching the light. Nathaniel noticed the way the boy touched it, almost like a habit, like checking for something familiar. "Who taught you this?" Nathaniel asked, his voice sharper now. Malik looked up. "My grandma." Nathaniel gave a small scoff. "Your grandma heals people?" Malik nodded. She said, pain talks? Most people are just too loud to hear it. A few people exchanged confused looks. Nathaniel exhaled through his nose. That sounds like fortune cookie wisdom. But Malik did not react. He stepped closer and pointed, not touching yet. Lift your arm. Nathaniel frowned. I cannot. Try. Nathaniel rolled his eyes but obeyed, lifting his stiff right arm barely 6 inches before the familiar tightness stopped him. The muscles locked like old rusted hinges. Malik watched carefully, his face serious now. It is not your arm, he said. It is your shoulder. Nathaniel stared. Every specialist had focused on the arm, the nerves, the hand. None of them had said that. And how would you know that? Nathaniel asked. Malik shrugged. Because your fingers are scared, but your shoulder is holding the fear. The sentence made no sense. And yet somehow, Nathaniel felt his stomach tighten. He looked at the boy's bracelet again, the deep scratches in the copper, the strange shape carved into it. Something about it felt familiar, like a memory standing just outside the door. Malik held up both hands. Small hands? Steady hands? 10 seconds, he repeated. Nathaniel looked around the room, feeling the eyes on him. He had faced boardrooms, investors, and reporters. But suddenly this felt stranger than all of that. He swallowed and leaned forward in his chair. Fine, he said. 10 seconds. Malik stepped in, close enough now to place his fingertips just above Nathaniel's shoulder, and the moment his hand hovered there, Nathaniel felt it. Not pain. Not pressure. Just warmth. Like the beginning of something waking up. Malik's fingertips hovered for half a second before resting gently against the ridge of Nathaniel Vaughn's shoulder, right where the expensive suit jacket folded at the seam. The hospital lobby seemed to shrink around them. The rain outside softened into a low hiss against the windows, and even the buzzing lights overhead felt quieter somehow. Nathaniel sat perfectly still, unsure why his breathing had changed. It was strange. A child's hand should have felt light, meaningless, almost laughable. But Malik's touch carried a strange steadiness, like placing your hand against a tree that had stood through 100 storms. Do not move, Malik said softly. Nathaniel almost laughed at the command, but something in the boy's voice made him listen. Malik closed his eyes, his small fingers pressing lightly, not pushing, just listening. That was the oddest part. It did not feel like treatment. It felt like the boy was searching for something beneath the skin, beneath the bone, beneath the years Nathaniel had carried pain like a locked suitcase. The nurse near the desk checked her watch. 4 seconds. A man by the entrance whispered, "What is he doing?" Nobody answered. Malik tilted his head slightly, his expression changing, like he had heard something invisible. Then he moved his fingers an inch higher, pressing a different spot near the collarbone. Nathaniel felt it instantly. A deep warmth spread across his shoulder, slow and steady, like sunlight moving through cold water. Not pain. Not even pressure. Just release. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "What did you do?" he asked, but Malik did not answer. "Breathe," Malik whispered. Nathaniel frowned. "Excuse me?" "Breathe all the way in." It sounded ridiculous. Still, Nathaniel obeyed. He took a slow breath, deeper than he had in months, and for the first time he noticed how tight his chest always felt. How shallow his breathing had become. Malik shifted his hand once more, pressing the back of Nathaniel's shoulder blade with his thumb while keeping his fingers near the joint. Again. Nathaniel inhaled. The warmth spread further now, down his arm, into his hand. His fingers twitched. The movement was so small no one else noticed. But Nathaniel did. His eyes widened. For 3 years those fingers had felt like stiff wood by evening. Now they tingled like blood was finding roads it had forgotten. 6 seconds. 7. Malik stepped back suddenly. "Now lift it." Nathaniel stared at him. "That is it." Malik nodded once. "Lift it." Nathaniel looked around, suddenly aware of everyone watching. The room felt suspended, balanced on one breath. Slowly, almost afraid to hope, he raised his right arm. 6 inches? Then 8. Then 12. Higher than it had gone in years. A gasp rippled through the lobby. Nathaniel froze, staring at his own hand like it belonged to someone else. His fingers opened. Closed. Opened again. The stiffness was not gone, but something had shifted. Something real. Nathaniel looked at Malik, his heart beat louder now than the rain outside. And for the first time since the crash, Nathaniel Vaughn was not thinking about money, doctors, or pride. He was thinking one impossible thing. How does this boy know my pain better than I do? Nathaniel Vaughn kept his arm raised, frozen in disbelief, his fingers trembling not from pain, but from movement. Real movement. The hospital lobby had gone so quiet that the soft hum of the vending machine near the hall sounded louder than before. A nurse dropped her clipboard onto the counter, the sound snapping through the silence like a crack of thunder. The elderly woman near the coffee machine covered her mouth. The construction worker stood up from his chair, eyes wide. Nathaniel slowly lowered his arm, staring at his hand as if it had returned from somewhere far away. For 3 years, every morning had started with stiffness. Every night ended with frustration. He had paid specialists thousands of dollars an hour, flown across state lines, sat in clinics from New York to California, and listened to men with framed diplomas explain why healing had limits. But an 8-year-old boy in worn sneakers had done something in 10 seconds none of them could explain. Nathaniel looked at Malik, his voice lower now, stripped of the sharp humor from before. Do it again. Malik blinked once. Why? Nathaniel frowned. To make sure. Malik tilted his head, studying him. You felt it. Nathaniel swallowed. He hated that the boy was right. He had felt it. Not just in his shoulder, but deeper. Like something had unlocked that had been stuck long before the accident. That was luck, Nathaniel said, though his voice carried less certainty than he wanted. Malik looked down at the copper bracelet on his wrist and ran his thumb over its scratched surface. Luck does not know where to touch. That answer made the nurse behind the desk laugh under her breath, but not mockingly this time. More like surprise. Nathaniel stood up from his chair, straightening to his full height. At 6'2", in polished shoes and a suit worth more than most people's monthly rent, he towered over Malik. But somehow, the boy did not look smaller now. Nathaniel rolled his shoulder. The movement was smoother. Not perfect, but different. Better. He tested it again, lifting his arm higher, nearly level with his chest. A full 6 inches higher than before. The room broke into scattered whispers. Nathaniel's chest tightened. Not from pain. From memory. Suddenly, he remembered the crash. The twisted metal. The smoke. The cold rain soaking through his shirt as he lay trapped, unable to move. He remembered the months after. The surgeries. The endless exercises. The private anger. And beneath all that, the quiet truth he never admitted to anyone. He had stopped believing he could heal. Malik looked up at him. Your body was waiting. Nathaniel stared. Waiting for what? Malik's eyes moved to Nathaniel's chest. For you to stop fighting it. Nathaniel almost snapped back, but the words caught in his throat. Because deep down, he knew the boy was not talking about the shoulder anymore. He was talking about everything. Nathaniel stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Malik could hear. Who exactly is your grandmother? Malik hesitated for the first time. His fingers tightened around the bracelet. Her name is Evelyn Carter. The moment the name left his mouth, Nathaniel's face drained of color. Because it was not just familiar. It was impossible. And suddenly, the warmth in his shoulder was nothing compared to the chill racing through his spine. Nathaniel Vaughn did not breathe for what felt like 3 full seconds. Evelyn Carter. The name hit him like a door opening in a house he thought had been abandoned forever. The bright hospital lobby blurred around the edges, the polished floors, the worried nurses, the curious strangers, all fading beneath the weight of a memory he had locked away 25 years ago. Evelyn Carter was not just a name. She was the woman who had once put his life back together when he had nothing. Before the money. Before the private jets and glass towers. Before magazines called him a genius. Back when Nathaniel was 26, broke, and sleeping in the back office of a failing hardware store in Birmingham, Alabama, Evelyn had been the landlord downstairs. A widowed woman with warm hands, sharp eyes, and a way of understanding pain before people spoke it. Nathaniel remembered the long nights when his shoulder first gave him trouble from overwork, how she would press her fingers into the muscle and tell him, "Pain stays where pride hides." He had laughed back then too. Just like today. But somehow, she had always been right. Nathaniel stared at Malik's copper bracelet, and suddenly it clicked. He had seen it before. On Evelyn's wrist. Scratched, weathered, impossible to forget. "That bracelet," Nathaniel whispered. Malik looked down. It was hers. Nathaniel's throat tightened. The noise in the room came rushing back. Someone at the desk answered a phone. A cart rolled down the hallway. Rain tapped against the windows like impatient fingers. But Nathaniel heard only his own heartbeat. "Where is she?" he asked. Malik's eyes dropped to the floor. For the first time since he had walked into the lobby, the boy looked like a child. Small. Quiet. Carrying something heavier than his bag. "She is sick," Malik said. Nathaniel frowned. "Sick how?" Malik shifted his weight. "She has not gotten out of bed in 3 weeks." The words landed hard. Nathaniel felt a sharp pull in his chest, stronger than the healing warmth still moving through his shoulder. Evelyn Carter, the woman who had once fed him when he could not afford groceries, who let him stay in her spare room for 2 months when the store collapsed, who believed in him before anyone else, was lying in bed somewhere sick. And he had not seen her in 25 years. Had not called. Had not written. Had not kept the promise he made when he left. "I told her I would come back," Nathaniel said quietly, almost to himself. Malik looked up. "She said you would not?" That hurt more than Nathaniel expected. Honest. Simple. Deserved. Nathaniel ran his hand over his face and looked at the boy differently now. Not as a stranger. Not as some strange kid with lucky hands. But as part of a past he owed more than money to. "Why are you here, Malik?" Nathaniel asked. Malik looked toward the free clinic wing at the end of the hall. "I came to get medicine for her." Nathaniel followed his gaze, and for the first time that day, the healing in his shoulder felt small compared to the wound opening in his heart. Because suddenly he understood. The boy had not come looking for money. He had come looking for help. And somehow, in the middle of helping Nathaniel, he had reminded him of the debt he never repaid. Nathaniel Vaughn looked at the small paper slip in Malik's hand, the edges wrinkled from being folded too many times. A prescription form. Half-filled. Stamped by the free clinic on the east wing of the hospital. Nathaniel took it gently, his eyes moving over the medicine names, the dosage instructions, the cost estimate scribbled at the bottom in blue ink. $87.40. The number hit him harder than it should have. $87. Less than what he tipped his driver for waiting outside in the rain. Less than the lunch he had not finished 2 hours earlier. And yet for Evelyn Carter, it was the difference between relief and suffering. Nathaniel folded the paper carefully and looked back at Malik. "Why did you not ask me for help?" Malik adjusted the copper bracelet again, his fingers tracing the worn scratches like they were words only he could read. "Grandma says help that has to be asked for is different than help that sees you." Nathaniel swallowed. That sounded exactly like Evelyn. The same quiet wisdom. The same way of turning truth into something impossible to ignore. Nathaniel glanced around the lobby, suddenly aware of how many people had heard everything. The nurse who had doubted Malik stood silent now, her eyes softer. The man by the window shook his head like he still could not believe what he had seen. Nathaniel looked back at Malik and noticed something else. The boy looked tired. Not sleepy. Burdened. Like someone carrying grown-up worries in a small body. "How did you get here?" Nathaniel asked. "The bus." Nathaniel frowned. By yourself? Malik nodded. It took an hour and 15 minutes. Nathaniel stared at him. In the rain. Across town. Alone. Just to get medicine for his grandmother. The thought tightened something in Nathaniel's chest. He remembered being young and desperate, carrying rent money in his sock because he had no wallet, walking 6 miles because he could not afford gas. He remembered Evelyn opening her front door and handing him hot soup without asking questions. She had seen him. Just like Malik said. Nathaniel turned toward the reception desk. Fill this prescription, he said, handing over the paper. The nurse blinked. Right now? Nathaniel's voice sharpened, but not with anger. With urgency. Right now. She nodded and disappeared down the hall. Nathaniel turned back to Malik. Take me to her. Malik hesitated. To Grandma? Yes. Malik looked unsure. She might not want to see you. The honesty landed clean. Nathaniel nodded slowly. That is fair. He looked down at his shoulder, rolling it again. The movement came easier now. Not healed. But open. Like the first crack in ice after winter. But I need to see her, Nathaniel said quietly. Malik studied him for a long moment, as if measuring something deeper than words. Finally, he nodded once. She lives 12 miles from here. On Pine Street. Nathaniel reached into his pocket for his keys, then stopped. The $1 million he had joked about earlier suddenly felt meaningless. Because standing there in that bright hospital lobby, Nathaniel understood the truth with uncomfortable clarity. The real debt he owed Evelyn Carter could never be paid with money. And for the first time in years, he was afraid not of pain, but of being too late. The rain had eased into a thin silver mist by the time Nathaniel Vaughn and Malik Carter stepped out of St. Matthew's Charity Medical Center. The glass doors slid shut behind them with a soft hiss, and the cold evening air wrapped around them like a quiet warning. Nathaniel's black sedan waited at the curb, polished and spotless beneath the streetlights, the driver standing beside it with an umbrella already raised. But Nathaniel waved him off. Go home, he said. The driver blinked. Sir? I am driving. The man hesitated, then nodded and handed over the keys. Nathaniel opened the passenger door for Malik, and for a moment the boy stood still, staring at the leather seats and glowing dashboard like it belonged in another world. You ever ride in one of these? Nathaniel asked. Malik shook his head. No, sir. Nathaniel almost smiled at that. He had spent years collecting expensive things, but suddenly seeing them through Malik's eyes made them feel heavier somehow. Less impressive. Malik climbed in carefully, setting his canvas bag on his lap like it held something precious. Nathaniel got behind the wheel, the familiar smell of leather and cedar filling the silence. He started the engine, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The windshield wipers brushed away the mist in steady rhythm. Left. Right. Left. Like a clock measuring regret. As they pulled onto the wet streets of Birmingham, Nathaniel kept glancing at Malik. The boy sat straight, small hands folded over his bag, the copper bracelet catching flashes of streetlight. How long has your grandma been sick? Nathaniel asked. Malik looked out the window at the passing storefronts. Since winter. Nathaniel frowned. That is 4 months. Malik nodded. She says it is just her body getting tired. Nathaniel tightened his grip on the wheel. That sounded like Evelyn too. Always making pain sound smaller so others would not carry it. Why did she never call me? Nathaniel asked, almost to himself. Malik answered without turning. She said people who leave usually stay gone. The words settled deep. Nathaniel felt them in his chest like stones dropping into water. He remembered the promise. 25 years ago, standing on Evelyn's front porch with his first real job offer in Atlanta, he had hugged her and said he would come back. He had meant it. At the time. But success had a way of stretching days into years, and years into silence. Traffic lights reflected red and gold on the rain-slick pavement. They passed neighborhoods Nathaniel had not driven through in decades. Places he once walked when his pockets were empty and his future felt uncertain. He could almost see the younger version of himself in those streets. Hungry, proud, broken. And Evelyn had seen him when no one else did. "What made you touch my shoulder like that?" Nathaniel asked after a long silence. Malik looked down at his bracelet. "Grandma taught me." "How?" Malik shrugged. "She said the body remembers what the mind hides." Nathaniel exhaled sharply. Another Evelyn sentence. Another truth he had ignored. The car turned onto Pine Street, and the houses grew smaller, older, quieter. Porch lights glowed warm against the dark. Malik pointed ahead. "That one." Nathaniel slowed in front of a small white house with peeling paint and a crooked mailbox. A porch light flickered weakly above the steps. Nathaniel stared at it, his heart pounding harder than it had in any boardroom, because for the first time in years, he was not walking toward a deal or a decision. He was walking toward the woman who had once healed him long before he ever had money, and now he did not know if she would even open the door. Nathaniel Vaughn sat in the parked car for a moment, staring at the small house as rainwater slid down the windshield in thin crooked lines. The porch looked smaller than he remembered, the white paint faded to a tired gray, the wooden railing leaning slightly from age. 25 years ago, this porch had been his shelter. Evelyn Carter had sat right there in her rocking chair, sipping sweet tea and telling him that hard seasons did not last forever. Back then, he believed her because he had to. Now, standing at the top of the world, he wondered if he had forgotten the climb. Malik opened the passenger door and stepped out first, pulling his hood over his head against the mist. Nathaniel grabbed the paper pharmacy bag from the passenger seat and followed. His polished shoes splashed in shallow puddles along the cracked walkway. The house smelled like rain and old pine, and for the first time in years, Nathaniel felt nervous. Not business nervous. Human nervous. Malik climbed the 3 wooden steps and pushed open the screen door carefully, the rusty hinge creaking. "Grandma?" he called softly. The house answered with silence at first, then the faint sound of a television somewhere inside turned low. Nathaniel stepped into the doorway and stopped. The living room was small and warm, lit by a single yellow lamp beside a worn brown couch. The wallpaper peeled at the corners. A small fan turned slowly near the window. On the walls were framed photos, some crooked, some faded. Nathaniel's eyes caught one instantly. A much younger Evelyn Carter standing beside a skinny young man in a work apron, smiling with tired eyes. Him. Nathaniel swallowed hard. Malik disappeared down the hallway and called again, softer this time. "Grandma, I am home." A weak voice answered from the back room. "Did you get the medicine, baby?" Nathaniel froze. Even after all these years, he knew that voice. Softer now. Thinner. But the same. Malik stepped into the bedroom, and Nathaniel followed slowly, his heartbeat pounding against his ribs. Evelyn Carter lay in a small bed by the window, wrapped in a pale blue quilt. Her hair had gone silver. Her face looked smaller, thinner, but her eyes were still sharp, still carrying that same quiet strength. She looked at Malik first, then at the pharmacy bag in Nathaniel's hand, and then her eyes lifted to his face. The room went still. Nathaniel felt 26 again. Broke. Lost. Ashamed. Evelyn stared at him for a long moment, her face unreadable. Then she let out a small breath, almost like she had expected this moment, and grown tired of waiting for it. "Nathaniel Vaughn," she said quietly. Hearing his full name from her lips after all these years broke something open inside him. He stepped closer, setting the medicine on the dresser with shaking hands. "Miss Evelyn," he whispered. She looked at the bag, then back at him. "You finally remembered where I live." There was no anger in her voice. That made it worse. Nathaniel looked down at the floorboards, his throat tightening. "I should have come back." Evelyn gave the smallest nod. "Yes. You should have." The truth sat between them, heavy as stone. Malik stood by the bed, watching both of them with wide eyes, finally understanding there was history here deeper than he knew. Nathaniel looked at Evelyn's frail hands resting on the quilt, and for the first time in all his years of building wealth, he understood something painful and simple. Some debts do not grow smaller with time. They grow heavier. Evelyn Carter looked at Nathaniel Vaughn the way only time can look at a person, not at the suit, not at the polished shoes, not at the wealth stitched into every detail of his life, but straight through to the young man he used to be. The room was quiet except for the soft rattle of rain against the bedroom window, and the faint ticking of an old wall clock in the hallway. Malik stood near the bed, holding onto the strap of his canvas bag, his eyes moving between them, piecing together a story no one had explained. Nathaniel finally lifted his eyes. "I thought about coming back," he said, his voice low and uneven. Evelyn gave him a tired smile. "Thinking and showing up are not the same thing." The truth of it settled over him like cold air. Nathaniel pulled the wooden chair closer to her bedside and sat down, something he had not done in years without checking his watch or his phone. Tonight, both stayed in his coat pocket. "You saved me," Nathaniel said. "Back then, when I had nothing." Evelyn adjusted the quilt over her lap. "No. I reminded you who you were. You saved yourself?" Nathaniel shook his head. "That is not how I remember it." His eyes drifted to Malik's copper bracelet. "You taught him." Evelyn followed his gaze and nodded. "The body carries truth. Same as the heart." Nathaniel looked down at his own hand, opening and closing his fingers again, feeling the looseness still there, the movement still real. It was not perfect, but it was alive. "He healed something today," Nathaniel said. Evelyn looked at him carefully. "Did he?" Nathaniel swallowed hard. He realized then it was never just the shoulder. The accident had left pain in his body, but success had buried pain somewhere deeper. The kind that came from forgetting who lifted you when you could not stand. Malik stepped closer to the bed. "Grandma, I told him you needed medicine." Evelyn smiled at her grandson, reaching for his hand. "And you brought him anyway." Malik nodded. "I think he needed something too." Evelyn laughed softly, the sound thin but warm. Nathaniel felt his throat tighten. Out of all the boardrooms, hospitals, and private offices he had built, this small room felt more honest than any of them. He stood and walked to the dresser, looking at the framed photo of himself at 26, standing beside Evelyn with sawdust on his shirt and hope in his eyes. He barely recognized that man now. "I made a promise," Nathaniel said, turning back to her. "And I broke it." Evelyn studied him, then gave a slow nod. "Promises are strange things. Sometimes they wait for us." Nathaniel stepped closer to Malik and knelt so they were eye level. "That $1 million, he said. Malik frowned. "I said I did not want it." Nathaniel nodded. "I know." He looked at Evelyn, then back at Malik. "So I am not giving it to you." Malik looked confused. Nathaniel smiled for the first time that night, small and real. "I am giving it to this house, your grandmother's care, and your future. School. College. Whatever you choose." Malik's eyes widened. Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment, emotion passing across her face like sunlight through clouds. Nathaniel rolled his shoulder once more, feeling the freedom in it, and understood the truth at last. Malik had not healed him for money. He had healed him by bringing him back to the place where he had first learned what it meant to be seen. And in that small room on Pine Street, Nathaniel Vaughn realized the greatest healing was never in the body. It was in remembering the people who made your life possible.